I think that the key to an idea meritocracy is 3 steps. First, put your honest thoughts on the table for everybody to see. Most people don't do that, but put your honest thoughts on there. Everybody puts them on the table. Okay, now it's a lot clearer. We honestly think that. That's step 1. Step 2 is understand the art of thoughtful disagreement.
Yes.
In other words, you react to disagreement in a way where it's curiosity. I might be wrong.
That's
How do we get
not
there?
As a contentious
not as a fight, right?
Not a political warfare.
Not right.
That's
Not right. In other words, I'm curious.
Yeah.
Human nature and our habit is so counter to that.
Yes.
2 people go to a restaurant. One says, I don't like the food. Somebody's reluctant to say, oh, I do.
Yeah.
I mean, simple things like that. So to understand the art of thoughtful disagreement, that's step number 2. And through that, you can understand each other better. You can probably make a better decision than you can make individually. The power of good collective decision making is enormous relative to what anyone has in their own head. And then the 3rd step is if you don't have an agreement with that, how do you get past that?
Right.
You have to have a protocol.
Right.
In any relationship. However you do it.
There needs to be a judge and jury, whether it's a process or a human or what have you, right?
I don't know. It's the same.
It can't go on forever.
Right. It may be the same with your spouse.
Maybe.
In other words, you still have whoever
Is
you're with.
Is flipping a coin a good idea?
It could be.
Maybe.
It may be the rule. In other words, or what I like to do, what I generally go to, is mutually agree on a party. And that you say, okay, help me through this disagreement and help me get to that. That's a good, handy process. Or we, in our own way, we have what we call believability-weighted decision-making. I'd like to tell you about it, okay? Believability-weighted decision-making. To describe what it's like, I'll use a simple example.
Go ahead.
You're sick.
Yes.
You have a bad disease and you want to go, and you say, I better go to the doctor. Well, you know that you're not the person to prescribe yourself. So you know that you're not the believable person. So the best thing you could do is to find 3 people, 2 or 3 people, ideally doctors in that case, who will disagree with each other, who are willing to find the right answer and will disagree. If you do that kind of triangulation and they all sort of agree and then you're listening and it makes sense what they're saying, probably you should go down that path. When they're disagreeing, they're bringing to the surface the issues. When you start to think about how do I make sense of that and how do I weigh that, you're then going to come forward and you're going to weigh. At the end of the decision, you're going to say, who am I going to believe? And what you're going to do in your subconscious mind is going to go, oh, I weigh this one more than that one, and I'm going to make a decision. Okay, so now imagine a system in which everybody has believability-weighted points. In other words, imagine that all the people that you're working with actually start to create points. I won't digress yet into how we do it, but so that now we know that your believability on that subject is different than your believability, and everybody has that. Then you have a weighted average vote based on believability. Okay, that's an idea of meritocracy. It's going to get you the best decision. The reason it gets you the best decision is because you as an individual don't have the best answer. In other words, if I come to there, if I'm always the one that's the boss, think about decision making. There's 2 types of...
Before you go there, Ray.
Yeah.
Yeah, so no soy involved in our process. What we're doing is we find high-quality fish stocks. So this is a real fish, and we find basically the best and most high-quality fish we possibly can. We take a small sample from that, about like this big, about the size of like maybe a dime. I know we're on a podcast, so about the size of a dime. And from there, we isolate just the cells that we're looking for. So we're looking for cells that can grow out very, very quickly and have the capability to differentiate. That means turn into the muscle, fat, and connective tissue that people actually want to eat. And so these first cells, we're calling them progenitor cells. They're just the cells we start off with. We grow them out in large quantity in a bioreactor. So it'll look a lot like a brewery, like where you can get beer. And from there, we then...
A bioreactor is a device, a physical device.
Yep, it's a lot like a fermenter. It's just basically a big tank with a propeller, which inside of a tank is technically called an impeller, but whatever. An impeller inside of it that just sort of moves things around.
Impeller moves it around, creates like some sort of...
current.
current
basically.
to create a reaction.
Yeah, it's just to make the cells that make sure that they actually are all eating all the nutrients that we have in there. So we have a nutrient bath in there. It's proteins, salts, and sugars. The salts and sugars are the exact same stuff that you're already eating, and the proteins are things that we are replicating from the inside of a fish. So they are, on
Now,
a very...
how is a protein replicated? What's that process? So you're dumping a cup of protein in there, essentially. Yeah. How do you replicate a protein?
So what we're doing is we are looking at basically what goes on inside of a fish, because these cells get these proteins, and these proteins signal them to divide. They signal them to grow into more cells. And so we're finding the exact DNA in the fish that produces those proteins. We're taking that DNA and then we're putting it into yeast, or a microbe like yeast, and then having that microbe produce this protein for us.
So the yeast will then make this DNA split and grow?
The yeast makes these proteins. The yeast is like a little factory that produces these proteins, and then we feed the proteins over to the cells. And so it's the same process that we use in order to make insulin for diabetics, or the same process. It's very similar to how beer is brewed, honestly. I mean, beer is yeast that's producing an output, and so we're doing that. We're just putting DNA into the yeast and making it into our little factory that can produce things for us. It's also like Impossible Burger. They're doing this with their heme protein. That's how they produce that.
Got it. And then how does it become flaky and pressed into a fish, or is that not on the agenda right now? It's just going to be like essentially chopped up fish. How does it become fish texture-like, I wonder?
Right now, we're very much focused on just getting these cells to be as efficient and as good tasting as we possibly can. There's a lot of different avenues to be explored in terms of giving it that real texture, which is why we have basically our timeline for 2019 putting out fish as an ingredient and as an unstructured product, and then for 2021 something that's more structured.
So you'll be able to give a chef fish that they can then mix into a...
Here's the most important thing. Seriously, I really mean this. We really are on a race to save the planet. I really, really believe this. Here's the thing. We're the only generation who actually has some foresight. Like, think about this. In the entire history of humanity, we had to, rely on, crystal balls and, a burning bush, right? Sitting where we are. To give us a glimpse. Of where we're heading. And now we actually have some data. We're the first generation in human history to see the entire planet. I met John Glenn before he passed away. Amazing guy, amazing American. First American to go around the planet, see the whole thing. I asked him, and he said, yeah, it blew me away. I never thought we could see the whole planet all at once. If you were standing on a flat earth, if you're standing on the seashore, you see about 7 miles. After that, the horizon dips away. And as long as humans have been around, we've been climbing taller and taller mountains, towers, trees, to be able to see what's over the horizon. What are we looking for? We're thinking about a lion that's over the horizon that might bite us, or looking for opportunity. Now, in our generation, we can see the whole thing. And not only that, we're also mostly all connected. There is no reason for us not to act right now. And believe me, that window is small. And if we don't do it, I swear, future generation will look back and say, what a waste. You had that opportunity when the opportunity cost was actually relatively cheap. The price of conservation will never get cheaper in the future. It's as cheap as it's going to get now, and it'll only get more expensive. So not acting now is crazy. And that's why people who've done the giving pledge, like Steve Case and others, I so applaud that, because they're not just saying we're going to leave this, leave this for future generations to deal with. They're saying we're going to deal with it now, because right now is probably the cheapest to be able to deal with it.